Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that's been generating a huge wave of attention lately, and that's the Iraqi dinar. But this isn't just about speculation or hype. We're talking real-world changes, statements from Iraq's leadership, shifts in oil export policies, banking reforms, and possibly one of the most important moves in modern Iraqi economic history, a floating currency. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia Al-Sudani has made some important public remarks that are turning heads in financial circles, and they could have big implications, not just for Iraq's economy, but for international investors, oil markets, and anyone who's been keeping a close eye on the dinar for years. So, whether you're a seasoned investor, someone holding dinar from years ago, or just curious about what's happening in Iraq and what it might mean globally, this is the deep dive you don't want to miss. Let's start with something that surprises most people. Did you know that Iraq, along with other oil-exporting nations, has accounts with the U.S. Federal Reserve? It's true. This is all part of how international oil sales and dollar flows are structured. Iraq, being a major player in global oil, participates in this system like many of its OPEC counterparts. But here's where it gets really interesting. According to Prime Minister Sudani, Iraq not only has these accounts, it fully controls them. In other words, Iraq has direct sovereignty over its U.S. dollar reserves managed through the Federal Reserve System. That's significant because it underscores a level of independence and control that some people may not realize Iraq currently exercises. Now, up until recently, Iraq was withdrawing around $14 billion in cash annually from these reserves. That means physical U.S. dollars were being flown into Iraq, cash in literal bundles, to support internal financial operations. But things are changing. Since moving to more modern, digitized banking transactions, the amount of physical cash Iraq now withdraws has dropped to under $10 billion a year. That's a pretty dramatic drop, nearly a 30% decrease, and it signals a major shift toward formal banking and international compliance. Less reliance on physical cash means more transparency, more trackability, and fewer loopholes for things like smuggling, gray market currency trading, or off-the-books deals. These changes are now trickling down into Iraq's business environment, particularly when it comes to trade. In the past, a lot of import-export transactions were handled loosely through exchange officers and customs brokers, with little regard for formal taxes or duties. That's now coming under the microscope. Iraq is tightening its regulations. Transactions are facing greater scrutiny. And this means some traders, who had grown accustomed to minimal oversight, are now feeling the pressure of the new, stricter financial system. This pressure is becoming so significant that some economic experts, like Salam Yari, are publicly warning that Iraq may soon have to revise its national budget. Why? Because government revenues and spending assumptions may not match up with this new financial landscape. On top of that, external challenges like tariffs, shifting oil demand, and inflation are adding even more complexity. Let's talk about those tariffs for a moment. There's been a lot of concern around U.S. tariffs and whether they affect Iraq's most important export, oil. Thankfully, the answer is no. U.S. customs duties do not apply directly to oil imported from Iraq. That's great news for Baghdad and for the broader Iraqi economy. But, and this is important, Iraq does impose tariffs of its own, particularly on luxury goods imported from the U.S., such as high-end vehicles. Think imported sports cars, top-tier SUVs, and other premium consumer items. Now there's growing international pressure for Iraq to reduce or eliminate some of these tariffs in order to maintain smoother trade relations with key partners. So while Iraq doesn't have to worry about U.S. duties on oil, it still needs to navigate a delicate balancing act when it comes to how it taxes foreign imports and how that plays into both diplomacy and domestic policy. Now let's shift gears and talk about what everyone really wants to know. What's happening with the Iraqi dinar and what could be coming next? Recently, there's been intense speculation around possible revaluations of the dinar. In fact, some reports and chatter suggest the dinar could be positioned anywhere from $4.50 to $5 USD in the near future. That would be a massive change from its current levels and, if true, could potentially make early investors very happy. But let's take a realistic look. Why are people saying this could happen? Well, there are a few major factors. First, oil prices. Iraq is one of the top oil-producing nations in the world. Its economy is heavily dependent on oil, and when oil prices are strong, that brings in significant foreign currency reserves. More reserves mean more leverage to strengthen the local currency. In this case, the dinar. Second, political stability. Over the last few years, Iraq has been slowly but steadily rebuilding its institutions. A more stable, transparent government tends to inspire investor confidence, which can help drive currency appreciation. Third, international perception and reform signals. Iraq's willingness to modernize its financial system, reduce corruption, and adopt global banking practices is making analysts and international observers take notice, and that builds momentum. But there's also plenty of skepticism. Some economists argue that the buzz around a $4.50 or $5 dinar is based more on hope than hard math. They say these figures may not reflect current macroeconomic realities, and instead represent target values that may be years away, if reachable at all. And let's not forget how unpredictable currency markets can be. Some of you may remember when investors rushed to buy Iraqi Dinar after 2003, thinking Iraq's economy would quickly bounce back and the dinar would explode in value. And while some investors did profit during brief rate adjustments, others were left holding the bag, stuck with dinar that didn't perform as expected. It's a reminder that currency speculation is exactly that, speculation. And while there's always potential for upside, there's also risk. You've got to do your homework. Now let's explore what might be the biggest financial shift Iraq is planning, moving to a floating exchange rate. If this goes ahead, it would represent a complete overhaul of how the dinar is valued. There are two main types of currency floats. A free float, where market forces, supply and demand, fully determine the currency's value. No central bank intervention. A managed float, where the market still plays a key role, but the government or central bank steps in occasionally to correct volatility or maintain stability. Iraq is considering the managed float option. That means the central bank would still have the ability to adjust or intervene when needed. But overall, the dinar's value would be much more responsive to market dynamics. This is part of a larger strategy for monetary reform, which could include adjusting the official exchange rate, introducing new lower denomination notes, developing digital payment systems, and rolling out public education initiatives to prepare Iraqis for this new system. And what does this mean for everyday people? Well, for one, it could improve the value of money when traveling or trading internationally. If the dinar appreciates under the floating system, it could lead to stronger purchasing power. But it also means more day-to-day volatility. Prices could fluctuate more often, and people would need to stay informed about the value of their money in real time. That's why the Iraqi government is preparing a national education campaign, so citizens can understand how the float works, how exchange rates are determined, and how to navigate the changes. Banks, ATMs, businesses, all of them will be updated to reflect the new pricing systems. And for investors or expats outside of Iraq? If you're holding dinar or thinking about entering the market, you'll want to watch these developments closely. A float could create new opportunities, but also introduce more uncertainty, especially in the early stages. So let me ask you, what do you think? Do you believe Iraq floating its currency will help the economy stabilize in the long run? Or could it lead to more volatility and potential market confusion? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts, especially from people who are invested in or actively watching the Middle East's economic developments. And hey, if you found this video insightful, give it a like and consider subscribing for more deep dives like this one. We cover everything from currency trends and economic reform to geopolitical shifts and real-world financial strategies you can actually use. Stay informed, stay ahead of the curve, and I'll see you in the next one.